Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to create and use the tkinter button widget and how to create the following window. When you click on this first button, it will display the current time, and the second one will display a message box with the message hello. So we will import from tkinter the button class that we will use to create the button widget, label that will display the time, tk to create the main window, message box to display the hello world message, and font to create the font for our text button. From below we will import image and ImageTk to create the image for our image button, and from datetime I will import datetime to create or to get the current time. So to create the main window, first I will call tk to create the window, set the geometry, the width, the height, and the x and y positions, title, and finally the background color. To create the label that will display the current time, I called label with the following parameters. We have the main window as the parent window. Text will be empty at first. Font, I selected Bookman font with the size 50, and the background color the same as the one for the main window. And then I called back to position the label and display it on the parent window. Now I will create the buttons. I will have my button text button. I will call button with the parameter main window as the parent window, and the second button, my button img, the image button, I will call also button with the same parameter main window. These are the two buttons created. My button img is the cut time, and my button text is the say hello you want to get it button. In the following, I will show you how I created the two buttons. To create the desired button, you have to set the right properties with the right values. To do that, you have three ways. The first one is to set the property when calling the constructor of the button. Here I set the parent window to main window. The second one is to call configure method and to set the desired properties. Here I set the active background to snow. The third one is to set directly the property by assigning the value to the property itself. Here I set the highlight color to salmon. There are a set of properties needed by both of the buttons. Here, for example, for the text button, we needed to set the border width, the relief, the width, the height. Same properties set for the image button. But for the image button, we needed to set the image, which is needed only by this type of buttons. And for the text button, we had to set the text, the foreground and the active foreground colors needed only by the text button. The first common property I set is the active background. It is a color. Here I set it to snow for the text button, and for the image button I set it to this value. As you can see, there is two ways to specify the colors in tkinter. So the active background color is the color of the background of the button when the mouse hover over this button. So here I set it to snow for the text button. As you can see, the background changes to snow, and for the image button, it changes to this green color. The second common property I set is the background color. Here for the button text, I set it to sky blue one. And for the image button, I set it to golden road, the same background color of the main window. The next property is the highlight color, which is also related to highlight thickness. For both of the button, I set the highlight color to salmon, which is the color of the border around the button when we set the focus on this button. And for the highlight thickness, for the text button, I set it to 2. And for the image button, I set this value to 0. Now, if I change these values, for example, here I will set the highlight thickness to 5 or to 10. Same for the text button. I will set it to 10 instead of 2 and see what happens. So here is the highlight thickness border. So for the button, first button, or for the text button, and this is the one for the image button. Now, if I set the focus on the text button, it turns to salmon, and if I set it on the image button, the same happens. The other properties are the border width. Here I set it to 5. For the image button I set it to 0. Relief, which is the form of the button or how it will be displayed. Here I set it to raised. It can be sunken, pitched, groove, or raised. And state I set it to normal. It can be also active or disabled. So normal is normal state, the default normal state. Raised is the actual form of the button. If I set it to groove, for example, I will have this button. And sunken, the button will have this form, which this is the form of the wedge button. So the default form is raised. Here if I set it to active, so I will have by default the active background color and the active foreground color that I will set later. If I set it to disabled, I will not be able to click on this button. Here, as you can see, the button is disabled, and when I click on it, nothing happens. The next common properties are the width and the height of the buttons. Here I set the width to 20 and the height to 2, but the width value of the text button is different than the width value for the image button. Even if they look the same on the display, the values means different things. Here I have the value for the image buttons, that means the number of the pixels. Same here for the height, the number of the pixels. But since for the text buttons I have letters displayed on the button, the width is related to the number of the width corresponding to the number of characters, and the 2 or the high is corresponding to the number of the lines of the text. Now if I set this value to 1, we can see that the display of the text on the button will change. The next property to define is the command property. In fact, it allows you to set the function to be called when you click on the button. Here it will call the say hello function. It doesn't need any parameter, so I will just set it to the name of this function. But later I will bind the calling to this function to other keys from the keyboard. This is why I needed this parameter. I needed a parameter, the event parameter, that I had to set by default to none. But if I don't use binding, I will not have to set this parameter, and I can simply execute the function or call the function. So here it will just show the info message box. This is the icon related to the info message box, and with the message hello. Now if I want to use a parameter with my say hello function, let's say a message to be displayed on the message box, I can use lambda and define it, the call of the say hello function, with the needed parameter. Here I will add another message to display, let's say hello world, and lambda will return a function that will be called later by the clicking of the button. And here I will add the parameter, so I will set a name for this parameter and add it to my message box. So when later I will click on the hello button, it will print the message that I set. Now if I want to have the same result by clicking, for example, on the return key, I will have first to add to lambda parameter known, parameter event set to known, and then I will have to call the function bind. Here I will call it with the same value. So when the focus will be on the button and I will click on return, it will call the say hello function with the hello world parameter. The same, I added the same binding to the main window. So when I will click on Alt S, it will have the same effect. So when I will run the code and test the binding, here when I will click on the Alt S keys, it will display the message. Or when I will set the focus with the tab key on the button and click on the return. Now, if I want to call the say hello function without the parameter say hello, first I will have to remove the lambda definition, remove the message or the parameter from the say hello function. Also, for the binding, it will simply call say hello. The same with the second binding. But I will have to add the parameter event now to the function say hello itself and delete the message parameter. Here I will have the default message displayed hello. Now for the image button, which will display the current time. Here I called the display time function with the parameter. The parameter is equal to 30. So when I will see the definition of the display time, I have this parameter which is threshold. When the number of the minutes of the current time is greater than this threshold, the foreground color of the label will be red. In the other case, it will be green. So to do that, first I will have to call datetime.now to get the current time, and then configure the text property of the label by calling now but strf time with the parameters hours, minutes and seconds format, and then test the value of the minute from the now variable itself, and if the value is greater than the threshold, it will be red, and in the other case it will be green. So if I change the threshold here only when clicking on the button, let's say it will be 2 minutes, and I will keep the same threshold here for the binding keys, and I will call the function. I will click on the button. Here it will display the current time, but the label will be displayed in red. But if I use the binding Alt G function, it will be green because the minutes is equal to 4, which is less than 30. And if I also set the focus on the image button and click on return, I will have the same color. Now the remaining properties that are needed only by the text button. Here is the text value, 2 lines text. Then I had configured the foreground color. Here I set it to snow and the active foreground to sky blue 1. So the foreground color is the color of the text. The active foreground color is the color of the text when the mouse over the button. Then to set the font property, I had to create font variable with the font class using these parameters. So I had to set the family, size of the font, the weight, the slant, the underline, and the overstrike. So underline equal to 0 means that there is no underline, and the overstrike equal to 0 means that there is no overstrike. Then I set the alignment of the text in the button to the left, so the lines of the text will be aligned to the left. Here the padding defines the space between the buttons of the button and the text itself. Underline equals 0 is different from the underline here of the font. The underline equals 0 means that the first character here, the S, will have an underline. This is why the user will be able to understand that the Alt-S keys will trigger the say hello function. And finally, the wrap length, which defines the wrapping, the length of the wrapping. But if I will increase the wrapping, change alignment of the text, if I add an overstrike to the text, and I change the value of the underline here to 5, which means that I will have an underline on the E character, and I will execute or run my code. I will have the following result. So I will have here the underline under the E. Since I increased the wrap length, I have only 2 lines, the original 2 lines, and I have the text started over, and I have this alignment to the right. If I change also, for example, the foreground color to red, and active foreground to blue. The color of the text changed to red, but when the mouse hover, it will be blue. Now I change the values back. So foreground color was no. The active foreground sky blue one. There is no overstrike. Justification of the text was left. The underline was on the S character, and the warp length was equal to 200. With 3-line text, alignment to the left with these colors and without overstrike. The last property needed only by the image button is the image to be displayed on this button. First, I had to call Image.open to create an image. As a parameter, it needs the path of the images file, but since my images file is on the same folder as the files of the code, I had just to add the name of the images file, then create a photo using ImageTk.PhotoImage with the image as parameter, and then add this set the image property of the button image to the photo created. Now, finally, to display the buttons and position them on the main window, I had to call back. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Bye. The link to the corresponding code will be available in the description below.